Welcome back to The Explainer, young talents. I am so incredibly glad you're here for this mentorship session. As a senior financial advisor, I've had the privilege of sitting across the table from just countless individuals, watching them build their futures right from the ground up. And growing up, we're almost always taught that 100% of our financial success just comes down to pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? But today, we are going to dive deep into a massive paradigm shift from our source material that totally challenges that exact notion. This explainer is absolutely going to change how you view your personal wealth journey forever, because we're talking about the invisible factors that literally rewrite the rules of personal finance, investment, and ultimate success.
So let's start with a little reality check, all right? I really want you to ask yourself honestly, do you actually believe that the people at the absolute top of the financial ladder got there purely through hard work? And on the flip side, do you think those who failed simply made terrible, uninformed decisions? We kind of have this tendency to think that working 60-hour weeks, sticking to an incredibly strict budget, and agonizing over every single penny is a guaranteed ticket to success. But in personal finance, navigating the turbulent seas of wealth involves something so much more profound than just your sweat and tears. It involves invisible currents that can either propel you forward or pull you right under.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll uncover the invisible factors of success, look at the famous Bill Gates case, learn to navigate turbulent seas, dive into strategies for handling uncertainty, and wrap up with a study and reflection guide.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the invisible factor of success, or demystifying the illusion of meritocracy.
Look, in all my years of advising young, beginning investors, I've seen over and over again that effort matters immensely. You absolutely have to put in the work. There's just no substitute for that. But here's the thing. Effort never explains everything. There are two intertwined forces accompanying every single success story out there: luck and risk. They're practically siblings. They represent this incredibly sobering reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces way larger than individual effort alone. Think of them as the unpredictable winds in our sails. When we finally understand that our financial destinies are shaped heavily by these invisible forces alongside our hard work, we actually start looking at money, investing, and our own daily decisions in a much smarter, much more forgiving way.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Bill Gates case, where talent meets rare opportunity.
Let's talk about one of the most famous success stories of our time, Bill Gates. The guy's talent, vision, and relentless drive were undeniably extraordinary, for sure. But talent is only half the equation here. Back in 1968, as a teenager, Gates had the immense privilege of attending Lakeside School. At that specific time, it was one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a dedicated computer terminal available for its students. I mean, the mathematical odds of a teenager having access to a computer back then were literally 1 in a million. That is an astronomically rare tailwind of opportunity. It was a stroke of pure, unadulterated luck that perfectly intersected with his hard work and brilliance.
But, as your mentor here, I really need you to look at the other side of this exact same coin. And we've got to look at it with deep empathy. Gates had an equally prepared, equally brilliant friend named Kent Evans. Kent shared the exact same passion and the same rare access to that computer. But tragically, Kent died young in a mountaineering accident before graduation. This starkly shows us that risk actively molds our destinies just as much as luck does. Both of these young men were incredibly smart, both were prepared, but one experienced the ultimate invisible risk. It's just a sobering reminder that we are, to some degree, at the mercy of chance, and it completely reframes how we should view both staggering success and heartbreaking human failure.
So there's this crucial quote from the source material that I absolutely love, and I tell young investors to remember it all the time. Forgetting luck breeds arrogance. Forgetting risk reduces empathy. Truly absorbing this philosophy keeps us incredibly grounded in reality. It stops us from judging others too harshly when they face financial ruin, because we understand the invisible risks they might have encountered. And just as importantly, it stops us from thinking we're invincible geniuses when our own portfolios just happen to be in the green. Which brings us to Section 3, navigating turbulent seas, the
the micro-level application.
Let's bring this back down to earth, to our everyday financial reality. Imagine two entrepreneurs. They've got identical drive, identical work ethics, and equally brilliant business plans. But one launches a real estate firm during the massive economic boom of 2005, just totally riding a wave of cheap credit and high demand. The other launches the exact same real estate firm during the devastating financial crash of 2008. Their final financial results are going to be worlds apart. And it's not because one was lazier or less smart, but entirely due to invisible market risks and the unpredictable timing of the economic sea. They navigated differently because the oceans they were sailing in were entirely different.
This illustrates a terrifying, but honestly ultimately liberating truth for everyday small investors like you and me. External economic variables you simply cannot control will dictate a massive part of your outcome. You might budget perfectly and save diligently, only to get hit with a sudden medical emergency that drains your accounts. Or maybe you invest really wisely, only to face an unexpected layoff due to a global pandemic that completely slashes your income. Acknowledging these practical, everyday economic storms means you can finally stop blaming yourself for every single dip in your market or setback in your life. You start recognizing the invisible risks at play.
Okay, Section 4, Strategies for Handling Uncertainty, Your Action Plan for Resilience.
You know, you can't control the ocean, but you can absolutely steer your ship. So here are 3 concrete strategies directly from our source material that you really must implement to handle this uncertainty. Number 1, celebrate your wins, but keep your ego in check by actively acknowledging the lucky breaks, the timing, and the help that got you there. Number 2, when you face difficulties, adopt a reflective learning approach. Learn from your errors without assuming you controlled all the variables. Sometimes a really good decision just meets a bad outcome. And number 3, prepare for the long term. Doing your absolute best, living below your means, and staying strictly disciplined is how you survive the inevitable risks that are going to come your way.
When you actually adopt these strategies, you achieve some highly practical psychological benefits. It immediately increases your humility. It drastically strengthens your resilience during a financial crisis because you realize, hey, not everything is my fault. The ultimate goal of resilience isn't to get rich quick. It's simply to stay in the game long enough for luck to find you. And most importantly for young talents like yourselves, this mindset helps you avoid unfair comparisons. You stop comparing your hardworking Chapter 1 to someone else's incredibly lucky Chapter 20. It completely relieves that terrible financial anxiety when things don't go perfectly according to plan.
Finally, Section 5, Study and Reflection Guide, the Mentor's Final Challenge. Let's wrap this up with a few rapid-fire reflective questions to test your brand-new, resilient mindset.
I want you to ask yourself honestly right now, is your personal financial ship sturdy enough to survive a crisis without sinking? Do you have an emergency fund built up for those invisible risks like medical bills or sudden layoffs? Are your investments properly diversified so one bad storm doesn't capsize your entire future? Because surviving the storm so you can just stay in the game, well, that is the true ultimate advantage of a long-term thinker.
And on the flip side, remember, luck isn't just pure magic. It's a wind you gotta catch. Doing your best, studying the markets, upgrading your skills, and staying disciplined is exactly what puts you in the prime position to hoist your sails when that favorable wind finally blows in your direction. If you aren't prepared, well, the luck is just going to pass you by. I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Whether you're buying a stock today, negotiating a new salary, or literally just sitting down to set your monthly budget, how does knowing about the invisible forces of luck and risk change your strategy? Take this wisdom. Deeply respect the turbulent seas of personal finance and start building your resilient, long-term future today. See you in the next explainer.